All right, so today we're diving into structured data. You've probably heard that term before, maybe alongside schema markup, and maybe thought, ugh, sounds a little technical. But stick with us, because once we break it down, you'll see how powerful this stuff can be for anyone with a website. Whether it's for a business, a blog, really anything, we're taking a look at this guide.
Mhm.
From the digital marketing agency Digemark, it's called Estruturação de dados y Schema Markup, potenciando o SEO on page. And they've got a really practical approach laid out here, and luckily, we have an expert here to help us unpack it all. So, what's the big deal with structured data? Why should we care?
Well, think about it like this. Google's smart, but it doesn't always get your website the way a human would. Structured data is all about helping you speak Google's language by organizing your content so search engines can understand it and categorize it easily. And this makes a huge difference in how your website shows up in search results.
So instead of Google just seeing this wall of text and
Mhm.
images, we're giving it a clear breakdown of what each piece of content is actually about.
Exactly. So for example, let's say you've got a product page on your website. With structured data, you can tell Google specific things, like the product's name, price, availability, reviews, all those key details that a potential customer would want to know.
So that's how those little eye-catching details show up, like the star ratings
Mhm.
and pricing, right there in the search results. It's like giving your website this extra little flair to stand out.
Precisely. Those are called rich snippets, and they're a direct result of using structured data. They can significantly increase the chance of someone clicking on your result instead of one of your competitors.
Okay, now I see why this is a game changer, but you mentioned schema markup earlier. Where does that fit into all of this?
Schema markup is the language that we use to create this structured data. It's a standardized vocabulary with specific terms for all kinds of things. Products, businesses, recipes, articles, you name it. By using schema markup, you're speaking Google's language in a way it can easily understand.
So it's like we're giving Google a perfectly labeled map of our website's content using terms that it already knows. But how technical is this really? Can people like me actually implement this?
Absolutely. There are formats like JSON LD, which is a way to add structured data to your website's code. But the good news is you don't need to be a coding whiz to use it. There are tons of user-friendly tools,
Yeah.
plugins that can help, even if you're a complete beginner.
That's a relief. So even if I'm not super tech savvy, I can still tap into this power of structured data. But let's get specific about the benefits. You mentioned rich snippets, but what else does this do for my website?
One of the biggest benefits is improved visibility in search results. When Google understands your content better, it can match it to relevant searches more accurately. So this means you're more likely to show up for the keywords that actually matter to your audience.
So it's not just about showing up, it's about showing up for the right searches.
Exactly. And remember, Google prioritizes websites that provide a good user experience. When your website's well-structured with relevant information, it makes it easier for visitors
Yeah.
to find what they're looking for. And this can lead to lower bounce rates, longer time spent on your site, and ultimately, a better chance of turning those visitors into customers or loyal readers.
Okay. I'm seeing the big picture here. Structured data helps Google understand my content, which leads to better visibility, better user experience, and potentially more conversions. That's huge.
It is. And this is especially important with the rise of voice search. People are using voice assistants now to ask questions in a more conversational way. Structured data helps your website answer those questions directly, making it more likely to show up in voice search results.
So if someone asks their voice assistant, find me a bakery near me, my website is more likely to pop up if I've used structured data to clearly label my business information.
You got it. Structured data is like giving Google the context it needs to connect your content to those real-world searches.
Okay, this is all starting to click, but before we move on to how to actually implement structured data, are there any potential pitfalls that we should be aware of?
There are a few things to watch out for. The DIGR guide highlights the importance of providing complete and accurate information. Each type of schema markup has specific properties that you need to fill in if you're missing information. Or it's inaccurate. It can actually harm your website's performance.
So don't just slap some schema markup on my website and hope for the best. It sounds like this requires careful planning
Yeah.
and execution.
Exactly. Another mistake to avoid is inconsistency. Make sure the information in your structured data matches what visitors see. On your actual web page, if there's a mismatch, it can confuse search engines and lead to penalties.
So be honest and transparent with my data. Don't try to trick Google. What else should we be careful about?
The last thing I'd mention is avoid going overboard. Don't feel like you need to mark up every single piece of content on your website. Focus on the most important elements, the ones that truly add value and are relevant to your target audience.
So it's about being strategic and intentional with my structured data, quality over quantity.
Exactly. Now that we've covered the basics and potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
Are you ready to see how this all works in practice?
Absolutely. Let's dive into some real-world examples and see how we can start implementing structured data on our own websites.
All right, so let's get into some real-world applications here.
Okay.
I'll say you have an online store and you're selling, I don't know, handmade candles. You could use Schema Markup to create rich snippets for each product, showcasing the price, the customer ratings, even scent descriptions, right there in the search results.
Wow, I can already see how much more enticing that would be for shoppers. Instead of just seeing a basic link, they get all those extra details that help them decide, okay, is this worth clicking on? It's like window shopping, but right there on the search results page.
Exactly. And it's not just about attracting those clicks. When you provide this structured data, you're also helping Google understand the context of your content. So instead of just seeing a bunch of words and images, Google understands, okay, this is a product, it has specific price, it has certain ratings, and so on.
So it's like I'm giving Google this cheat sheet so we can confidently recommend my products to the right people.
Precisely. Think about a local bakery with Schema Markup. They can display their opening hours, their address, customer reviews, even photos of their delicious pastries right in the search result.
It's like turning a simple search result into a mini advertisement for their business.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this applies to all sorts of websites, not just businesses. Let's say you have a blog and you share travel photography. Schema Markup can let you highlight the destination, dates the photos were taken, even the type of camera you used.
So it's like adding these extra layers of information that make my content more discoverable and more engaging for people who are specifically interested in travel photography.
Exactly. And remember those common errors we talked about. This is where they become really crucial. Let's say you're marking up those products. On your e-commerce site, you need to be meticulous about including all the required properties like price, currency, availability. If your data is incomplete or inconsistent, it can actually work against you.
So it's not just about slapping on some schema markup and calling it a day. There's a real art to doing this effectively.
Absolutely. And that's where tools like Google's Structured Data Markup Helper come in. It guides you through the process, make sure you're creating valid schema markup that follows all the guidelines. It's like having a schema expert right by your side.
That sounds like a great resource. For anyone who's new to this, what other tools or resources would you recommend?
Schema.org is the official website for all things schema. It can seem a bit daunting at first, but it's an incredibly valuable reference guide. And of course, there are various SEO plugins and platforms that offer built-in support for schema markup, some of which we mentioned earlier. So depending on your website platform, you might already have some handy tools at your disposal.
This is great information. Our listeners now have a solid starting point for exploring these tools and putting schema markup into practice. What are some other things to keep in mind as we dive deeper into this?
One thing I'd emphasize is that schema markup is constantly evolving. New types and properties are being added all the time to keep pace with the ever-changing web, so it's important to stay informed about the latest updates and best practices.
So it's an ongoing learning process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's part of what makes it so exciting. By staying curious and up to date, you can really leverage schema markup to its fullest potential and keep your website ahead of the curve.
I love that perspective. Okay, we've covered some great examples and resources, but I want to make sure we tie this back to the bigger picture of SEO. We talked about rich snippets, user experience, but how does schema markup directly impact search engine rankings?
That's a crucial question. While schema markup itself isn't a direct ranking factor, it plays a significant role in how Google understands and ranks your content. Think of it this way. Google wants to provide the most relevant and useful results to its users. When you use schema markup, you're making it easier for Google to understand your content, which increases the likelihood of your site ranking higher for relevant searches.
So it's like giving Google the information it needs to confidently recommend my website to the right audience.
Exactly. It's about building trust and authority with search engines by providing clear, structured information that aligns with user intent. The better Google understands your content, the better it can match it to relevant queries.
It's like speaking Google's language fluently, so it can easily grasp what my website is all about.
That's a great analogy. And this ultimately leads to a better user experience because people are finding exactly what they're looking for, which benefits everyone.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. I feel like we've gone from feeling intimidated by schema markup to actually understanding its power and how to use it effectively.
We've explored some practical examples of schema markup, from online stores to local businesses to blogs. We've seen how it can enhance the search results, improve the user experience, and ultimately drive more traffic to your website.
And we've emphasized the importance of using schema markup correctly, providing complete and accurate information, and staying up to date with the latest developments.
Exactly. And we've highlighted some helpful tools like Google's Structured Data Markup Helper and Schema.org, which can make the implementation process much smoother. Ready to explore some more advanced strategies?
Absolutely. Let's dive into the future of structured data and see what else we can learn. We've covered the basics of structured data. We've seen some practical examples. Now let's look ahead. Where is this technology going? How can you stay ahead of the curve?
Well, what's so fascinating about structured data is that it's constantly evolving. New types and properties are being added all the time to keep up with the way the web is changing. As search engines get better at understanding information, we need to adapt our approach to structured data as well.
So it's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing. We need to keep learning and refining our strategies.
Exactly. One area where we're seeing huge advancements
Yeah.
is voice search optimization. More and more people are using voice assistants now to find information. And structured data plays a big role in making sure websites actually show up in those voice searches.
That makes sense. When we use voice search, we ask questions in a more natural way, more conversational, like, find me a vegan restaurant near me that's open late. And structured data helps search engines understand what we're really looking for.
Precisely. Schema types, like local business and restaurant, become really important here. By using these effectively, businesses can make sure all their key information, like opening hours, address, menu, reviews, is easily accessible to those voice assistants.
So it's about thinking ahead, structuring our data in a way that anticipates how people are searching.
Yes, and this applies to all kinds of websites, whether you're a local plumber, a travel blogger, an e-commerce store. Thinking about how your information can be found through voice search is really crucial.
So that's a great point. What other trends are you seeing in the world of structured data?
Another exciting development is the use of structured data for knowledge graphs. These are massive databases that search engines use to understand the connections between different things. By providing structured data, we're helping to build these knowledge graphs and make our websites more visible within them.
So it's not just about individual pages anymore. It's about connecting our content to this wider web of knowledge.
Exactly. And this has big implications for SEO. The more interconnected our content is, the more authoritative and trustworthy it appears to search engines.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I know some of our listeners might be feeling a little overwhelmed. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out with structured data?
I would say start small. Don't try to implement every type of schema all at once. Pick a few key areas that are relevant to your website and just focus on those first.
So prioritize and gradually expand your efforts.
Exactly. And use those tools we discussed earlier, like Google's Structured Data Markup Helper and Schema.org. They can really help you get started.
Great advice. Start small, use the tools, and don't try to do everything at once. What other tips do you have?
Testing and monitoring are crucial. Once you've implemented structured data, use tools like Google Search Console to check for errors and track your results. Are you seeing improvements in your search rankings, your click-through rates? Data is your friend.
So it's an ongoing process of implementing, testing, refining.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to experiment. The great thing about structured data is that it's relatively easy to make changes and see how they impact your results.
This has been an incredible journey. We've gone from feeling a bit intimidated by structured data to actually understanding its power and how to use it effectively.
Remember, structured data is a key part of modern SEO. It helps search engines understand your content, it enhances the user experience, and it opens up these new opportunities in areas like voice search and knowledge graphs.
And it's constantly evolving. Staying curious, informed, and adaptable is essential for getting the most out of it.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of structured data and schema markup.
We hope you learned something valuable today that you can apply to your own online presence. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,
and keep diving deep.